Dear viewer, this is Pastor Charles Franklin Pulu from Revelation Heralds in Kenya. Today, I'm bringing you a study on the prophecy of Gog and Magog, which very many people have always wanted to know. What does the name Gog and Magog denote in the Bible? As we read in Revelation chapter 20, from verse 7 to 10. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. Now, you will notice here that the prophecy concerning Gog and Magog is a prophecy that is fulfilled after the 1,000 years. Because that context says, when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. Then a hyphen is put, and then the name Gog and Magog is put there. And how does he go out to deceive the nations? To gather them for battle. So we are seeing Gog and Magog is related to a battle. When is this battle fought? After 1,000 years, when Satan is released from his prison, and the devil now gathers all humanity to fight against God's people. Now, what happens here? It is said in number, they are like the sand on the seashore, and they marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people. The city he loves, the new Jerusalem, which will be descending down from heaven. Now, in the same context, you will discover that all the wicked dead are resurrected after 1,000 years. Why? To face judgment. So, the devil now sees this great number, which is said, in number, they are like the sand on the seashore, and gathers all of them to march across the breadth of the earth and surround God's city as it descends from heaven. So we've established three facts here. Number one, the war of Gog and Magog is after 1,000 years. Number two, it is a war led by the devil, who has gathered all wicked people who will have resurrected after the 1,000 years to gather them to fight against God's people. And then thirdly, we've been told that fire will come down from heaven and devour them at the moment when they want to fight against the city of God, the new Jerusalem that will be descending from heaven with the saints, the angels, and Christ coming down. The devil will want to attack that city. Now, first things first, let us look at the two names, Gog and Magog. Where do they come from? Because we will not understand what this means in the context of the book of Revelation if we don't establish the origin of the two names. I want us to turn to the book of Ezekiel, and we'll be reading two chapters in Ezekiel. That's chapter 38 and chapter 39. And you will find where this prophecy has been picked from. For example, in Revelation, not Revelation, but Ezekiel chapter 38, the prophet Ezekiel says, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. You and all your troops, and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be a cloud covering the land. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind to devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people. You will come from your place in the far north, you and the many nations with you, all of them riding on horses, a great horde, a mighty army. You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. This is what will happen in that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. Therefore, I want you to see, dear viewer, several matters have emerged from this reading in Ezekiel chapter 38, that the two names that are found in Revelation chapter 20 regarding Gog and Magog have appeared here in Ezekiel chapter 38. We have the name Gog and then Magog. And of Gog it is said he is a prince, a chief prince. And then of Magog it is said Magog stands for the very many nations which have gathered together with Gog their king to march against Israel, to attack Israel, the city that is unwalled. Therefore, in that day, declares the Lord, the king of Magog, who is Gog, thoughts will come into his mind, and he'll devise an evil scheme. What is this evil scheme? To attack God's people, the city he loves, the unwalled city, and he will come from the far north. Now, north, prophetically speaking, is always associated with a source of divine wrath or war or an attack or retribution. Therefore, he will come from the north with the many nations riding on horses, and they will advance against God's people, Israel. But in that day, God says, in the day when Gog attacks his holy land, Israel, God's hot anger will be aroused. And in God's zeal and fiery wrath, he will cause a mighty earthquake. This earthquake will make all mountains to be overturned and all cliffs to crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. A moment, let's look at verse 22 also in the same book of Ezekiel chapter 38. God says he'll also execute judgment upon Gog with bloodshed and plague, and he'll pour out torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him and his troops, and on the many nations that will be with Gog, the prince of Meshech and Tubal. The plague, the bloodshed, the torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur will be used by God against Gog and Magog. Now, the same is also found in the book of Job, chapter 38 and verse 23, where God says, who has ever gone into my storehouse to see the amount of hail that I've reserved for the day of judgment? So God has reserved all this for the day of judgment. Now, we have seen Gog is a prince, is a king who leads many nations. We've seen Magog are the nations that align themselves with God to fight against Israel. But in that war, when the evil mind comes upon Gog to fight the unwalled city of God, then God's fiery wrath will come, and he'll be able to attack Gog and Magog and cause a great earthquake that will move all mountains all cliffs and all walls of every nature to be broken. Now, in chapter 39 that follows, Ezekiel says, Son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, I'm against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Notice here that Gog is an individual, he's a prince. I will turn you around and drag you along. I'll bring you from the far north and send you against the mountains of Israel. On the mountains of Israel will fall, you and all the troops and the nations with you. I'll give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I'll send fire on Magog. On the day I will give Gog a burial place in Israel, in the valley of those who travel east towards the sea. It will block the way of travelers, because Gog and all the hordes with him will be buried there. So it will be called the valley of Hamon Gog. Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Call out to every kind of bird and all wild animals, assemble them to come together from all around to the sacrifice I'm preparing for you, the great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. There you will eat flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of princes of the earth, as if they were of rams and lambs, goats and bulls. And the sacrifice I'm preparing for you, you will eat till you are glutted and drink blood till you are drunk. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the sovereign Lord. Thank you. So these are two chapters in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and chapter 39. Here we are seeing God talking about what will happen at the end time, the apocalypse regarding the nation of Israel in the old covenant within which Ezekiel was writing. That there is a king whom God calls Gog, and there are many nations who will ally themselves with Gog, whom God calls Magog. And Magog will comprise all manner of horse riders who will come to war against God's people Israel. And God says on the day they dare attack his people, he will be able to destroy all of them, and that the birds of the air and all animals will be called in to drink their fill of the blood of these mighty men, all these warriors, and be able to eat their fill of flesh. Therefore, God says he will bury them in a valley in Israel. Gog will be buried in Israel, in a valley called Hamon Gog. And beyond that, God says that there are several other things which are also going to happen regarding Gog and Magog. I want us to look at other events which also God spoke of regarding Gog and Magog. For example, in chapter 39 and verse 12, that when Gog and all the people, all the nations, all the wicked people of Magog are destroyed, then the land of Israel will be gathering their bones, and people will be employed for 7 good months. That's in Ezekiel chapter 39 verse 12. That for 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying them, that they may cleanse the land. That is verse 12. But in verse 9, it says, and they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both of shields and bucklers, of bows and arrows, and the handstaves, the spears, and they shall burn them with fire for 7 years. As for the bones of the wicked, who will have rebelled against God and his people Israel, 7 months will be given for cleansing the land by collecting their bones and burning them to cleanse the land. And that in verse 15, men will be employed And whenever they see a bone, they will put a mark so that those who do the collecting will see the mark and pick the bones and go and bury them in the valley of Hammon Gog. Now, dear viewer, I want you to understand that all this that we are reading is what God planned for Israel as the day when Jesus would have come as the king over Israel, so that the prophecies regarding the Old Covenant would have been fulfilled. But as we read in the book of Hebrews, God found fault with man and therefore had to put in place a second covenant. And he says he sets aside the first in order to fulfill the second. Why? Because when Jesus came, he was supposed to be crowned. He was supposed to be received as the king of the Jews. He was supposed to be received by the Jews as their king, and he would have established his kingdom. And in that day, then God, who represents Satan, would have mobilized all nations to fight against Israel and fight against Jesus, the king of the Jews. And God would have intervened to fight on behalf of the Jews to set up his eternal kingdom, with Jesus not having to die at the cross. But then on that day, Jesus would have been enthroned as the king over Israel, and God would have destroyed all the wicked people and established his everlasting kingdom with Jesus as the king over the nation of Israel. All wicked nations would have been destroyed in that day, and God would have caused a mighty global earthquake which would have turned everything upside down, and that all the wicked people would have died, and the Israelites would have gone out to pick their bones, to pick their weapons, and burn them, and cleanse the land for 7 good years. But now, because of the failure of the nation of Israel to recognize Jesus as the king over them, who was establishing a theocracy, who was establishing the kingdom of God, they thought of him as a human political king who was coming, and they joined hands with the Romans to kill Jesus and crucify him. Therefore, the properties of this prophecy in Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 9 were carried forward to the book of Revelation with slight adjustments to suit the new covenant. In a moment, I'll explain this. But let me summarize Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 39. Number 1, Gog is a king. He is the chief prince over the many nations. Number 2, Magog is the plural form. Number 2, we have said Magog is a plural form of many nations. Number 3, Gog and his army come from the far north. And we've said in the Bible prophecies, when you read in the book of Jeremiah, the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, you will discover that north was always associated with divine war or destruction. So the sides of destruction. So the devil, here called Gog, comes not from the literal north, but from a symbolic north, which is a side of destruction upon God's people. God will surround God's unwalled city to kill the peaceful people. There will be a severe earthquake to overturn mountains and cliffs. Birds of the air will consume their flesh and drink the blood of kings, princes, and mighty men in the great sacrifice that the Lord is preparing in the mountains of Israel. Then finally, Gog and Magog will be consumed by fire, and that God will send out his people to gather the bones of those who are destroyed and cleanse the land of the bones of these people for 7 good months. And they'll also gather their weapons with which they attacked Israel and burn them. And that God will receive a burial place in the land of Israel. Now, I want us to see something also in the prophecy of Isaiah, which also relates to the plan which God gave to Israel as a nation in the Old Covenant. And I want us to see something also in the book of Isaiah chapter 65. In Isaiah chapter 65, God says, "For behold, I create a new heaven and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. And I rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people, and the voice of weeping shall no more be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. There shall be no more an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days." Now listen. "For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner being 100 years shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands." That is Isaiah chapter 65 from verse 18 to 22. Now, I want you to understand this. Here the Lord is saying, the child who shall die in the new earth that he will create, who will die at 100 years, will be seen, or a person who will die at 100 years will be seen as a child. And a sinner who dies at 100 will be seen as cursed. So these are the properties of what pertained to the first covenant. Now, what happened? If you can be able to read the book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse 24, when the 70 years had expired, the 70 years where Judah went into captivity, when Daniel wanted to know the aftermath of the 70 years when they were going back to Jerusalem, God gave them properties of what they were going to do, so that God could fulfill all these prophecies we have read about in Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel 39, and Isaiah 65. What were these requirements or terms and conditions? Number one, they were to finish transgression, put an end to sin, atone for wickedness, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy. Those were the requirements. That after the 70 years, because they went into captivity because of wickedness, so God required them to finish transgression, and you could usher in a new earth. God required them to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up all the visions from all the prophecies we've just read, and anoint Jesus Christ as the King over Israel. But they did not do this. Therefore, God set aside the first covenant, which these were what would be called apocalyptic prophecies pertaining to the nation of Israel. Now God brought in the whole earth and gave us the book of Revelation, which modified those properties, as we are going to see shortly. Let me explain. How were they modified? For example, in the new earth which God is going to create, there will be no curse, there will be no death. During the day when God comes to establish his everlasting kingdom in the new earth, we are seeing in the book of Revelation that God will destroy Satan and will destroy all the nations, and they'll all be burned in the lake of fire. But according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, where Gog and Magog originates, according to the first plan, men would die and their bones would be strewn all over the place in Israel. And then the men of Israel would spend 7 months collecting those bones, cleansing the land. they could spend 7 years trying to make the land clean. But in the second plan, the Second Testament, the New Covenant, God cleanses the land by fire. There is nothing like collecting bones. There is nothing like burying Gog. In Ezekiel, we are told Gog, who is Satan, will be buried in Israel. But in the New Testament setting, he will be destroyed in the lake of fire. Secondly, we have seen in Ezekiel 38 and 39 that God would be able to make the Israelites gather all the weapons that Gog and Magog wanted to use to fight against the people of God. And they'll be able to burn all those weapons there. But now in the New Testament setting, no weapon formed against the New Testament saints will be gathered by anybody. Instead, God is going to destroy everything, and the book of Peter says everything will be destroyed and cleansed by fire. So there is no time for picking weapons and burning them, or burying bones, or putting markers where one finds a bone. There will be nothing like that. Now, we want to look at what is going to happen in the end time setting, and we have seen that Isaiah talks of people will die at 100 in the new earth, will be considered just mere youths, but in the new earth there will be no death. People will live like angels, endlessly, forever. There will be nothing like dying at 100. Secondly, let's look at another dimension, also which we read in Isaiah chapter 66 that now follows. In Isaiah 66 from verse 22 to 24, the Bible says, "As the new heavens and the new earth that I make will endure before me, declares the Lord, so will your name and descendants endure. From one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all mankind will come and bow down before me, says the Lord Almighty. And they will go out and look upon the dead bodies of those who rebelled against me. Their worm will not die, nor will their fire be quenched, and they will not loathsome to all mankind." So here, another matter arises. The issue of new moons and Sabbaths. Isaiah 66 says God is going to create a new earth. And in that new earth, his descendants will be there, and they will worship God from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, which means they will keep the new moon festivals as it happened under the Old Covenant. They will also observe the seventh-day Sabbath as it was commissioned by God at creation, and all mankind will come and bow down before the Lord. Then they will go out and look upon the dead bodies of those who rebelled against the Lord. The one of those wicked people will not die out, nor will their fire be quenched. They will be loathsome to look at by all mankind. Now, all these properties here tell us one thing, that the context within which Ezekiel and Isaiah wrote was according to the Old Covenant. Because in the New Covenant, the apocalyptic prophecy relating to the New Covenant does not have room for the new moon or the Sabbaths. Why? The book of Revelation chapter 21 and 22 state clearly that I did not see any moon nor sun in that city, because the Lord himself is the light of that city. Again, he says also in Revelation, there will be no mountain, there will be no sea, there will be no moon for people to use to mark the new moon seasons. There will be nothing like that. It will be a new earth where God himself will descend, and his glory will be the light of the new earth. But God created the sun, the moon, and the stars to be markers of seasons, and also for the sun to be able to rule the day and the moon to rule the night. The scenario is different in the New Testament. God himself now becomes the light, and the Bible says in Revelation, there will be no night. It will all be day. Brightness all through. There will be no night. The way it is in heaven. Angels don't sleep. God doesn't sleep. So will the same glory descend. So there will be no moon or sun to mark the day or provide light for the day and the moon at night. But those are the properties that are in Isaiah chapter 66. From one new moon to another, or from one Sabbath to the other, people would go and worship the Lord. This is not found in Revelation chapter 21, because chapter 21 verse 23 to 25 reads as follows. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light. On no day will its gates be shut, for there will be no night there. Clear? The city does not need the sun, the moon to shine upon them, for the glory of God gives it light. Or on no day will its gates be shut, for there will be no night there. So there is nothing like night, there is nothing like the sun, there is nothing like the moon. So these are prophecies which were given pertaining to the old covenant. Now, let's put this together for you, so that you can now be able to understand what this prophecy therefore means regarding Gog and Magog. Now, in Revelation chapter 20, verse 7 to 10, when the 1,000 years are over, remember what happens? Let me give you a quick chart of the events that we expect. Jesus is coming pretty soon. When he comes, the dead in Christ will be resurrected. We who are still alive, the righteous, will be able to join them and meet the Lord in the air. And we shall be with the Lord for 1,000 years in heaven. And the Bible says, we will be given the records that the angels are writing of the wicked, their life and all their activities, to be able to review those records and determine the amount of punishment to be meted out to each one of them. This is the work that will happen during the 1,000 years. Now, within the 1,000 years, before I go to after, within the same 1,000 years, the Bible says in Revelation 20, I saw a mighty angel coming down from heaven with a big chain, and he enchained the devil that he should not be able to deceive anybody in the four corners of the earth. This does not mean that the devil will actually be chained, but it means he will be alone, for there will be nobody to deceive. All the wicked will have perished at the brightness and the splendor of the coming of Jesus Christ during the second coming. So the devil will have nobody to deceive for 1,000 years. He'll be desolate, he'll be alone. Now, after the 1,000 years, the new Jerusalem will descend, and there will be such a mighty global earthquake that will rend all the graves of the wicked. They will be opened, and the Bible says the sea will give up the dead that were in them, and the number of the wicked will be as the sand on the seashore. Now, notice what happens here. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. Nobody will be alive during the 1,000 years. But after the 1,000 years, the wicked are resurrected at a go. Their number is so huge that the devil looks at the big number of these wicked people, and he convinces them that there are so many that they can be able to capture the holy city of Jerusalem. So he goes out to deceive them in the four corners of the earth, to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. So the war of Gog and Magog is a war fought at the end of 1,000 years. What happens? The devil thinks that they can pick weapons, the way we've read in Ezekiel 39, and fight God's people. But while they are being deceived thus, then God will rain down fire upon them, the lake of fire, and destroy all of them. And this happens under the New Testament, the Apocalypse, the New Testament prophecy, which has now been adjusted by God to suit what Gog and Magog was to be in the Old Covenant. Gog is the devil, Magog, the many nations that form the New World Order that are going to come together and be used by the devil to be able to perpetuate all his deceits. May God bless you so that you will be among the number of those who will be on God's side to see these things happen. God bless you. Amen.